Welcome to the course. This course is all about the infection stage. So on a Windows computer, the idea is to get access into that Windows computer. Typically organizations block programs, so executable programs, .exe on Windows computers. So typically companies, they block downloading and executing .exe files. So they do something on security. Not always, but sometimes they do that. So what hackers will do is they try other ways to gain access into the computer. For example, using a website, and that website's running a website application, HTML application, and that application can then take over the computer. Or they might simply send a malicious document. That document then can be a document, a PDF, and so on. And this document contains a malicious code. And when that malicious code is run, you completely take over the computer. So besides executables that is usually blocked in the company, there are different ways to gain access into a computer. And this course is all about getting initial access into the computer. In this course, we'll use a tool called Kali Linux. Kali Linux is a system specifically designed for hacking and security. So as the name implies, it's a Linux variant. It contains many hacking tools. So this is what it looks like. You can get it for free from kali.org, and you can put it on a USB flash drive or run it inside a virtual machine. And what you'll have is many different hacking tools. So just showing you some of them. Some of these are command line and some of these are graphical command line tools. Throughout this course, we'll just use some command line tools. We won't get into graphical tools in Kali. Besides all the hacking tools, it has some default things like File Explorer, where you can browse around your file system. Text editor to quickly edit some text. It has a web browser. There's Firefox included. There's also editor, so we'll use this a lot to run commands to use all kind of hacking tools, because it comes with Kali Linux comes with hacking tools for the command line as well as for the graphical interface. So before you continue this course, make sure to have Kali Linux at hand, because that's a tool we'll use. And also we'll use Windows 7 computer. So make sure to have both at hand before you continue the course. Because what we'll do is we'll hack into the Windows computer using various techniques. And one of the tools we'll use is the command line to get into the Windows computer. So as I said, you can get Kali from a website called kali.org. It's completely free and it's a computer system specifically for hacking. So you'll see if you click on Get Kali, kali.org. You can choose the platform that you want to use it on. So for example, you might want to just install it into your computer. Or maybe you want to run it in a virtual machine or from a USB flash drive. It doesn't really matter as long as you have Kali Linux at hand and a Windows 7 computer before continuing the course. Because those are the two tools or the two systems that we'll use. We'll use Kali Linux to hack into the Windows 7 computer. So make sure you have both running. It can be in a virtual machine, or if you have physical machines, that can be as well. So it can be that you run VirtualBox, where you have both computers running inside it. One, the Kali Linux computer, and the other, the Windows 7 computer. So you can do that. Or if you have physical computers, you can do that as well. It really depends on what you prefer, as long as you have Kali Linux and Windows 7 before continuing this course. Because what we'll do is we'll hack into the Windows 7 computer, so using Kali Linux. So you really need both before continuing this course. So Windows by default supports running scripts. Now these scripts are of the type Visual Basic, so Microsoft Visual Basic scripts can be run on any Windows computer by default. These kind of scripts have a .vbs extension. So while it shows here notepad icons, it's actually, if you take a look at the extension, you'll see VBS file. So if we right click on any of these files, you'll see they end with VBS or VBS file. And the scripts can be used to automate any task in your Windows computer. So it can execute application in the same way as you would normally use Windows. Besides running applications, you can of course do all kind of system tasks in scripting language. Now, there are several ways to run Visual Basic scripts. One way is using the command line, where you give the command line program to run the application, to run the script. Another way, with a malicious way, is to include the script inside an Office file. So any user opens the Office file and then the Visual Basic script gets run. Okay, so let's first take a look at running it as from the command line. So we open the start CMD, the command line, and we get into this kind of screen. Now note that I put the scripts on the desktop. So I'm gonna enter the desktop directory. And then there's two ways to run scripts. You can run it with the command C script if it's a command line script, and W script if it's a Windows script. So I will first script. And you'll see this is a command line script. It outputs some text to the command line. And this is what it looks like. So it defines a variable, a message. We define the message. And then it says wscript.echo with that message. So all this does is output the message, in this case Visual Basic script. You can also do this directly. So if you want, you can say some direct message here, instead of defining a variable that outputs it. So you can do it in one line. You'll see if I run it, you'll see hello world. Now important to write your own scripts. If you do file save as, you'll see by default it says here text documents.txt. So you want to say all files and then save it as .vbs. So make sure it says all files here. Otherwise Notepad will save it as a text file and you won't be able to run it. So save it as .vbs. See wscript.echo command, it just outputs hello world to the screen. Now we can run another script, for example example2. If we open that with Notepad, you'll see a similar program, but now instead of wscript.echo it says message box. So this is a Windows program, a Windows script. So instead we'll run it with wscript, and you'll see this shows the message as a graphical message because we use the command message box. Now this is all nice, and we can run simple scripts showing messages, but of course there's much more interesting things we can do with scripts. For example, we can use scripts to run programs. So I created a script here called bed, and if we open it with Notepad you'll see a bit of a cryptic lines, but you'll see here it calls run with calc.exe, the Windows calculator. So if we run this program, you'll see the script actually starts another program, calc.exe. So you can imagine if you have a malicious script, the malicious script can start one or more other malicious programs in the computer. So if the program is not a system program, calculator is a Windows system program, you need to specify the exact path to the script or to the program. So in this case we have MS Paint as example, and we need to specify the exact path, so the folder where the application, the executable, is stored. So in this case the application is stored in C Windows System 32. Now if we run that script, you'll see now that started the paint.exe. So scripts can run any other program, one or more programs if you want, or do other kinds of malicious activity. It can go far beyond a simple text message. You can do all kinds of things with Visual Basic scripting. And now we are starting the Visual Basic scripts using the command line, so using wscript or C script. Wscript if it's a Windows application, a graphical one, C script if it's a command line one. But in a malicious thing, what you can do is include a Visual Basic script like this one or any of the other ones inside Office documents, so that when the user starts the Office, opens the Office documents, it actually runs the malicious script. The Visual Basic language can be used inside applications, so inside Microsoft Office applications like Word, Excel, PowerPoint, and so on. It allows you to automate any task in nearly every keyboard and mouse interaction between the user and the Office application. And the way that you can add Visual Basic scripts into your documents, inside your Office documents, is using macros. A macro is just a piece of code that you can add into the Visual inside the, and in that way you can create malicious documents. So actually when the user will open the documents, some code is actually executed. So you can do that with Microsoft Office, whether it's a Word document or some other kind of document. So what we can do is we can start Microsoft Word 2016. So that version, so not the online version, but Microsoft Word 2016. So we'll start that. And we create a new blank document. Now, if you want, you can add some text here. Whatever you want to add to the document. To the user, it can look like a normal document. However, behind the scenes, you can run code. So if you click on View and click on Macros, you can create a macro. So let's create a macro called bed. And inside here, we can write Visual Basic code. So for example, we can write message box. Sorry. Hello world or whatever message. Let's just add hacked onto the screen. If we run this, you'll see it shows the document. What we can do is that once the document opens, it automatically starts this function bed. So the way to do that, we need to use some default Office functions. Auto open and document open. So we create a new function. You'll see a function starts with sub, and that's just the Visual Basic language, and ends with end sub, and everything between is your code. So we need to create two more functions, or modify two existing functions. Document open, and that one should call the function bed, and the function auto open, that one should also call bed. So we'll save this, and what this does is that once the document opens, it jumps to the function bed, and inside bed it runs the code, or your code. In this case it shows a message box, but of course you can also start a program or do all kind of malicious things. So we saved it and we'll close it. Next we'll save this. So click File, Save As. I'm going to save it on the desktop. Save it as contract. And we'll save it as a Word 97 2003. So this kind of file format. Save it. And now if we close the Office document, we could send this file to someone else's computer. And if the person then opens it, so it could download it from email or maybe via cloud, Dropbox, or maybe just the online file that the user then downloads. And then once the user opens that, you'll see that it runs our code in the background, or in this case in the foreground, because we actively see that the code is run here. But of course, that is because we make it visible, right? Inside View, Macros. If we click Edit, we actually explicitly show to the user a message box. Of course, what you can do is do a lot of things that is not actually visible to the user. Like for example, giving access to the computer, or starting programs, or all kind of malicious activities. And then the user doesn't actually see that. In this case, we make it so that, just for this example, that is really visible onto the screen once you open it. So we just saved the file. This is the macro, and the most important thing here is just to save it. So we saved it as a Word 97 2003 document type. So that's really all that is necessary to run code from a Word document. Now let's actually hack the computer using a Word document. So by hacking we mean getting a reverse shell into the computer. Okay, so how do we do that? What we can do is use a tool called MSF Venom. It's a console tool, and it lets you generate the virtual basic script that we need. So I'm gonna enlarge the font here a bit, just to make it more readable. So we use a command line tool to create the actual script. And we can create a shell now that can be the interpreter shell. Then we set the network address to connect to, which is our computer address. So we make this computer connect to our hacking computer box, because that way it bypasses the firewall. So we'll say connect to our IP address, and we can see our IP address using the command ipAddr show. So with this command we can see our IP address. We need a port to connect to, so I'm gonna pick port 443. You can pick any number, just as long as you're consistent throughout your activity with the same port. Now the type of file that we want to create is a VBA script, so VBA. And if I press enter, you'll see it will generate VB script for our in the terminal. So it will take a moment, and you'll see it actually creates the script. We have all the code here that we need, and of course we need to actually save that code. So I'm gonna save it with -o and then a script name. So I'm gonna name it bats.vba. So that saves the script into an actual file. So MSF Venom is a tool that can create all kind of malicious payloads. In this case, a payload for basic scripts that connects to our computer and will give us the interpreter shell, the interpreter reverse shell. So if I go to the directory, you'll see it created the script with that command, and now we need to get this script to the computer. An easy way to transfer that is just to use a web server. Of course, in a real world situation, you would have your own Windows box to create the malicious payload, and the victim's computer would be yet another. But in this case, we'll just copy the file using a server. So we can start a server using Python. So that starts a server on the box on the left, and on the Windows computer we'll just download the code. Now you can just type the IP address of the computer. Once you've done that, you'll see you can just download the file to your computer. Now of course you can do it in different ways. You can upload it to your Dropbox or email address and copy it using USB, or it doesn't really matter as long as you have the same code. I'm going to save it in, let's say, in the home directory. So in documents, bat.vba. Now we're going to include that in our documents. So we'll go to Word. Let's create a new document. Go to View, Macros, and we'll delete all this. And we'll create a new one called bat. And then in here we'll replace this actual code. So we'll go to Docs. I'm gonna open this with Notepad. I'm gonna open it with Notepad. So we'll actually copy all this code. might actually open it with another program just for readability. See if WordPad shows any better, or it just isn't any. Okay, WordPad opens it better. So we copy this code and we'll replace it. So now we'll save this code and close it. Next, you can add some text to the document if you want to, just to make it seem legit. Okay, now we're gonna save the documents. So we'll save it as in the desktop. Save it as contract or whatever you want to call it, Word 97 2003. I'm just gonna replace it. Okay, so now we created a malicious Word document and we should have a listener. So we can close this and we'll actually need to start listening because we use the interpreter shell. We'll need to use the Metasploit console, but regardless, when you made the actual program, the script, you want it to connect to your attack box, to your computer. And so in order to do that, you need to actually listen on your computer. Now for Metasploit version, we use the interpreter shell, so we need MSF console. So we start MSF console. Now, it takes a moment to load. We'll type use exploit multi-handler. Then we set the payload to the interpreter shell. Reverse TCP. We set the IP address to our IP address. We set the port to the same one we set before. And we type exploit. So that will wait for the document to be opened. It will wait for a connection. So if we start it, you'll see we actually get an interpreter shell. So just by opening the document, we got access into the computer. For example, if we type, see interpreter session opened, we can type help just to see. You see we can do all kind of commands like privilege commands, password dumping of the users. We can play audio. You see audio output commands, play audio. We can record a microphone, start a webcam chat. We can take a screenshot, control the mouse, keyboard, do some commands like rebooting, shutting down, or running programs, or browsing the file system, so all kind of file system commands. And we have the interpreter shell, we have access into the computer now. For example, let's say we want to see the current directory, we can type pwd. You'll see we're in the documents directory. If I type dir, you'll see we can, for example, any file. Let's say we want to download this file, we could type download bat.vba, and that's then downloaded to our computer. Or let's say we go into another directory and we can upload a file, same file, and you'll see that file has now been uploaded into the computer. We can create directories. You'll see we can also delete files and stuff like that. We have basically complete control over the computer. Now, it's not necessarily only terminal. So if I type help, you'll see there are some other commands here. Like you can record microphone, webcam, and stuff like that. You can also type screenshot, which will take an actual screenshot of the desktop. So if I type screenshot, you'll see it actually took a screenshot of the victim's computer. It's a screen share commands when you can watch the computer in real time, what they're actually doing or what's actually happening. So that takes a moment to load because it starts Firefox in the background with the screen. So you'll see that now we can actually watch what the user is doing. You can have a bit of a delay. Basically, we have complete control over the computer. And all we needed to do, or all the user needed to do to be hacked, was to open the document. They didn't really do anything unusual. They just opened the document, and that gave us complete access to their computer. Now we can press Ctrl+C, and we're back in the Meterpreter shell, and we can type any of the Meterpreter commands. You can create malicious websites as well using HTML applications. So an HTML application allows you to, or allows the victim to go to a website where then the website is shown and it can run a malicious program. So how does this work? Well, first we would need to set up or create a basic website, and websites can be created using the HTML language. So you can download the attached template of a basic web page. So this would be a very basic code of a web page. Let me just increase the font a bit. Now don't worry too much about the code. All this does is show a very basic web page. And I'm gonna save it as a .html file. So I'm save it on the desktop as a .html. And now you'll see I can open this with the web browser, with Firefox or Chrome, or whichever program you use to surf the internet. And you'll see once I start it, it will show you a basic website. So very basic website with a title and text. Of course, that can be any title and text you want. It can be images or whatever you want to show on the web page. The main thing is that we can include Visual Basic Script into the website. So we use the script text for that. And then can run, for example, a program. Which can be, for example, command.exe. So on a Windows computer, this would then run the command.exe program, because this is a line of VB script. So I'm gonna save this, and then on the Windows computer we'll actually open this web page. So in order to do that, we need to have the computer serving the web page. Now this is on the same network, so we can just serve this file using, sorry, it should actually be a .htas file. You'll see .html, but HTML application. So what we can do is now serve this file. Now if it's on the same network, we can just run a server. On the internet you would need to upload it to a server somewhere. So we'll start a server using Python. Enlarge the font here. So go to the desktop directory where we have that file, and we'll type python 3 -m module HTTP server and some port. So now we should be able to access it from this computer. And to access it, we need to know the computer's network address. So we can do that with ip-adder show. So the command ip-adder show will show you your network address. And we'll open its address. And you'll see I specified port 8080 before. And you'll see port 8080 in that command. You'll see here the application, so we could also go directly to the link or click on it. And when we click on it, it asks us to run it. So if the user clicks run, you'll see in this case Windows has some firewall that asks if you really want to run it. If they click allow, you'll see it runs the HTML application script where it shows the web page, but also run the script itself that started the command prompt. So we can of course change the the command prompt to run something else. For example, maybe we want it to run calculator on the Windows computer or whatever. If the user just clicks twice, you'll see it executes your script file. So we'll close it and let's click it again. Allow, and you'll see now it run the calculator program on the Windows computer. So it will do whatever you tell it to do in the script language, as long as they click run and allow. So then it will run your VB script applications. So this is directly from the browser. So notice that I'm using Internet Explorer here. It works the same with Edge, or you'll see that just by 2 clicks, you have control over the computer. So if they run, and if they have a firewall, click allow. Some people don't run the firewall or turn it off. You'll see then it runs our VB script, which can be running a calculator. But of course, we can do much more malicious things than that. Now let's take over the Windows computer. So in the same technique we'll create a website, a web page with a script, but now the script will take over the Windows computer, a so-called reverse shell. And we won't manually type the code. Instead, we'll use a program to create the malicious payload called Metasploit Venom, or MSF Venom. So -P to specify the payload, and what we'll specify is Windows. And then if your target is a 64-bit computer, use x64. x64. If the target is a regular fashioned 32-bit computer, use x86. And then we'll type shell _reverse _TCP. Next, we need to specify our IP address. So we do that here. Now, in here we assume that we're on the same network, so we use the network address. Let me type the IP address show command to see our IP address. Then specify the port. Let's say 443. So what this does, it will create a malicious script that connects to our computer, and that way we can take over his computer. Now the type of file we want to create is HTML application, and give it some name. So .hta, same extension as we used before. Now that will take a moment to complete. It is now creating the malicious script, and the malicious script will start a reverse shell, so we'll be able to completely control the target computer. Now in this case, there's invalid payload, so we need to specify invalid payloads. So for a non-64-bit computer, which is kind of the standard these days, we need to remove probably need to remove it to create the malicious payload. And you'll see it created the malicious payload example2.hta, and you'll see here it is. Let's move it into the desktop directory, and next we'll start a listener, because as you may notice in our command, we specified our computer's network address, so it will connect to our computer, and in order for it to connect to our computer, we need to be listening. So in order to listen, we type this command. So you'll see now it is listening on our computer for a connection. The connection will start once the victim opens that web application. Now, one last thing before it can do that is we need to be running a server applications, which I closed. So before we run that with Python, so this command will run the server. So now that is done. And let's move these windows a bit to the side. So this was what we used to create the executable example2.hta. Let me minimize that. It's running the server, and here it is waiting for the connection using this command. What we can do now is to try to connect to our computer. So open Internet Explorer. Can take a moment to run. We'll go to the website and try to load the HTA file, just as we did before. Okay, so we opened Internet Explorer twice. And what we'll do is so we open again the website where the user just clicks on the link. So let's switch this, and the user clicks on the link, clicks run, and then clicks allow. And you'll see at the bottom where we were listening, suddenly we are now inside the Windows computer. You'll see Microsoft Windows here. And we created a so-called reverse shell. So we can browse around the computer using the Windows commands or the DOS commands. You'll see we are inside the Windows computer. We might be interested in going into a particular directory, for example in the users directory. And you'll see there's a user John. So we can browse around the file system using this simple reverse shell. So for this, sorry, let me do dir again. For this to work, all the user had to do is click on the link and click run, and then once more click run if they had the protected mode running. So it's possible to turn protected mode off. I mean, some users might do that. They won't see even this message. So if they click allow, what you'll see is that it then connected. So we exit here. We could start a listener using this command, and when we click run, allow, you'll see that now we are inside the Windows computer. So this is a simple DOS shell. You can do basic commands, but we can't really do everything on the computer with this kind of shell.